that video might look somewhat familiar, even if you don't recognize exactly that particular scene. It might seem very, very similar to scenes that those of you who remember the riots in London in 2011 will remember scenes again identical to that. In 2011, a black man was killed by police in London, and what followed was riots. What followed was people essentially damaging property, assaulting random people. People died in those riots, a few people, and of course, many young people got some free stuff out of it. And it seems like some young people in that video that you just saw also wanted to get some free stuff. That might be one of the reasons, but you know, there's always an excuse, it seems, when people want to behave like animals for why they're right in behaving like animals and others are not. We saw this in this city as well with the 2020 Black Lives Matter riots, which unfortunately, unlike these riots, were not as widely condemned. And maybe that sends somewhat of a message. We saw this. We actually saw riots in Leeds a couple of weeks ago. These riots, by the way, the supposed reason for them, the supposed justification for them, was an incident that happened in was it last week in Southport, where children were stabbed to death. Some were stabbed to death, others were injured, and the identity of the stabber was not revealed for a while. So there were assumptions as to who that might be, and that supposedly justified these riots. Who the stabber is, we'll get to later on. But before that, there were riots in Leeds by Muslims over people taking children from a family, the police taking children from a family. Um, there has been a lot of violence in Britain. It doesn't look like it's going away. It does look like it's potentially going to get worse before if it gets better. And yeah, today marks the one month since Keir Starmer became Prime Minister of this country. Matthew, you voted for him. Your thoughts on this? Marco and Richard, laugh it up. I'll get to who you voted for later.
Well, I don't think any of this is anything to do with Keir Starmer, if that's what you're getting at. As you say, it's all been triggered by this stabbing incident, and obviously deeper sympathies to the families and anyone involved there. Where it seems to have been, as far as I understand it, there seems to have been sort of misinformation on social media suggesting that the perpetrator was a Muslim, possibly illegal immigrant, all of which has turned out to be wrong. And there's then been almost violence from, it would seem, Muslim gangs in reprisals to the people who were being violent towards Muslims, wrongly blaming them for the stabbings. It's all bad information on social media, and it's turned into total lawlessness.
So, of course, every politician comments on this stuff. Nigel Farage was saying something about the stabbing, where he said, "Look, we're not giving. We might not be getting all the information. It seems like maybe we're getting some of it. Something to the effect of, I'm just asking questions here. But what are they? What are they not telling us?" And of course, Nigel Farage is a super eloquent, super intelligent person. He knows how people hear what he says and what might follow. Marco, Richard, you voted for Nigel Farage. Your thoughts on this?
I didn't vote directly for him, but I voted for his party, yes. First of all, the action of the people we saw in the video it's inexcusable to use violence. Whatever you claim, whatever you reason, whatever kind of headline you might cling on to, when you choose to take an action and do violence and destroy property and be effectively choose to be a total vandal, that's not nobody else's fault but yours. We're a human being. We've got freedom of choosing what our actions are. And yes, you might be influenced by some ideas, but ultimately who commits the crime is the individual that does it. So having said that, Matthew said, well, it's not Keir Starmer's fault. It has nothing to do with Keir Starmer. Well, I would argue that actually something to do with the kind of environment that Keir Starmer has been pushing in order to create. When you not in the last 30 days, not since he's become prime minister, but the kind of ideology that he's been promoting, this kind of identity politics, whereby black people, yellow people, blue people, green people, white people, gay people, straight people, they're all different little tribes fighting for each other's survival. This is causing this kind of separation tribalism, which is exploited by people like Tommy Robinson, who always talks about us and them and this kind of stuff. That on the surface, it looks like it's not pushing for violence, but underneath it is undermined by this kind of gang warfare, which is taken for granted. So in a way, this is a culmination of the last 10, 15 years of politics from all sides. It's not just the Labour side, but clearly the Tories have been pushing the same crap throughout. So yes, it's the individual's fault, but the kind of atmosphere and the kind of way young people, especially, we see them, they are the main culprits, have been growing up in the last 15, 20 years. It's got all to do with it.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with what Marco said there. I mean, obviously, many anarchists don't choose to vote. I'll just leave a little pause there before I carry on. Okay, I want to start by talking about the Southport incident, because I think for people outside of the country, you need a few details to understand the severity and the anger of that. This was some young children at a Taylor Swift themed dance party being run in Southport, which is between Blackpool and Liverpool, sort of northwest of Manchester, on the coast. And a guy bursts in and stabs kids in that room who were at the themed dance party, and a 6-year-old, a 7-year-old, and a 9-year-old are stabbed to death in the course of that, and many of the other kids are seriously injured, and the 2 adults running the dance party were also injured in attempting to protect the children. Now, the person who was arrested at the scene was a few days away from his 18th birthday. So he was 17 at the time, putting him under the age of being a legal adult. That is part of the reason why his name was not released initially, perhaps. But also there is a definite pattern here. And I think the important thing to understand the response to this is to understand it within the wider context of all of the incidents that have occurred, all of the terrorist-style incidents that have occurred in recent years, where there is often a pattern of not releasing the name of the person if they turn out to be an Islamist-inspired attacker, and releasing rather more quickly if they are deemed to be non-terrorist or mental health or far right or whatever other category we're talking about. So and I think that is what is the context in which the reaction to not being told information about who had done this terrible, violent incident that had murdered children, was responding to. That's no justification for anything, but I do want to lay out that context clearly. And of course, even with the riots you're talking about in Leeds, sort of 2 weeks ago, which were based on the police taking, for child protection purposes, some children from a particular family in a what's described as a Roma community within this this area, Hare Hill of Leeds, that led to a mob trying to prevent the police from doing that, and then it descending into burning a bus, turning over a police car, setting that alight, and police in that incident pulling back. Now, I understand that when you're policing a riot, it's an incredibly difficult, volatile, fluid situation. And police in this country, unlike in Europe or in America, all they essentially have is riot shields and a line of them with helmets. They don't have weapons. They don't have tear gas. They don't have water cannon. They simply try and corral, kettle, move forward, pull back, keep two groups apart. Try and let some fires burn out and then put them out afterwards, and use cameras and CCTV, etc., to pursue who was responsible afterwards. But I just do want to say that in the Hare Hill riots, it took about 2 weeks for us to find out that 27 people have been arrested. We already know that about 370, 380 people have been arrested for the violence over the past few days, relating to all across the country, relating to the incidents that were sparked by, or said to have been sparked by, the Southport killings of those 3 little girls.
Yeah, just for people who aren't in Europe, Roma community is what before political correctness was called gypsies. And for people who know that culture, that is a culture where if you hear that for child protection services reasons children were taken, it's not shocking. And then if you see the video of the kids being taken, and one of the kids, he's a little kid, and he's fighting pretty fiercely with the cop. The cop doesn't seem to have a handle on him. You can see this kid has been taught to fight, and that alone is kind of scary in and of itself. But yeah, that of course, you know, for whatever reason, the local Muslim community decided that this was their fight. Okay, there's a bunch of stuff. Just quickly, Richard, some people don't vote because when they look at the options, they think, okay, this option is so disgusting that I really want to vote for whoever else. And then they look at the other ones and they see they're all vile and none of them deserve your vote, which is a good reason not to vote. I also want to get back maybe later to some of what people in labor have said, in part because of how shocking it is, in part because I have to uphold my commitment to Matthew to never let him live down the fact that he voted for labor. But before that, I want to talk about how the right has approached this, and again, and this is why I titled this episode the Tommy Robinson riots. I am aware that he is calling for calm, but he is also, Daniel, if you have that tweet of the list that he's tweeted, you know, he's calling for them to be nonviolent, but he is also telling people, look, here is this where this is happening. Here, anything that happens is, of course, he says it's the fault of Keir Starmer. And again, I'm not a defender of Keir Starmer, and I think he's handling this badly. But the idea that you know, somebody chooses to riot and it's not their fault is you know, is factually incorrect. So Tommy Robinson gives you that list, and if you want to riot, you can go to any of these places at any of these times and take part. And Tommy Robinson didn't. We're not hearing about him for the first time today. We've known what he's been doing. This is how he became famous. He became famous by you know, marching about how immigrants are taking our country over and what have you. And this is also something that people on the right here, unfortunately, mix very much, is the idea of multiculturalism being bad, which it is, and the idea of immigration being bad, which it is not, is a fantastic thing, and you need to know how to handle you know, stuff like that. So multiculturalism means all cultures are equal and we should respect your culture if it's a culture that encourages individuals to be successful and thrive, and that's going to be the same as a culture where women are beaten up by their husbands because it's a Tuesday, and men marry multiple wives, and you go and blow yourself up if there are Jews around. So that's a problem in an approach to what the culture should look like. But immigration means that people can move from one place to another to seek a better life for themselves. And if you make it clear that if that's not what you're here for, if you're here to be anything from, a founder of a multinational to a street sweeper, that's great. If you're here to import your backwards culture, that is something that we should stand against. And the way you stand against it is you say, here's the law. If you do any of this stuff, you will be punished, and you will be punished severely. But these supposed anti-immigration people go after the law, as we will see. Actually, you know what? Before I go to Matthew, Daniel, do you want to show this clip of these rioters, the white supremacist rioters, or the right wing, or whatever you want to call them, attacking the police? This is from about a week ago, but it's also a part of the riots. And thank you, Jonathan, for the super chat. Yes, Daniel, that one. All right, yeah, we got the point. Yeah, sometimes collateral damage happens, but this is funny because one of the guys went up to the police, to get in their face, and got hit with bricks in the head, the shoulder, and the balls. So that's kind of funny, but it's not funny. It's really not funny that these people are attacking the police. What kind of country do they want? And by the way, I go back to the Black Lives Matter protest in 2020 who wanted to defund the police, and I wonder which side are they on right now, because they should be on the side of the white supremacists, which seems like interesting bedfellows, but it's not at all surprising. They are two sides of the same coin. Matthew.
Well, just to quickly pick up on something Richard said a few minutes ago about the actual murder suspect's identity initially not being released. Just to be clear, because particularly viewers outside of the UK may not realise this, it is a sort of standard thing in our legal system that a defendant under 18, the sort of starting point certainly is that they are not named. Exceptions can be made, as has happened in this case, when the judge agrees that it's in the interests of justice. I think it has been suggested in this case the guy was coming up to his 18th birthday in any case, but I do wonder if it was at least partly in reaction to what was going on and trying to counter the misinformation about it being a Muslim immigrant. But there we are. I don't know the exact reasoning. But yeah, very funny clip. Clearly says it all, really. He's going up trying to sort of start on the police and ends up basically getting pummeled by his own side. Just encapsulates the stupidity of the whole situation in a sense. These people may well have legitimate grievances. They're entitled, if they believe they have legitimate grievances, to peacefully protest. But I think we would all agree that rioting and violence, as we're seeing, is not the appropriate way to achieve anything.
Yeah, by the way, some of the people in the chat, if you want to tell us why we're wrong rather than that we are wrong, that would be helpful, but I don't think you can because, if you are supporting this kind of stuff, then thinking and expressing those thoughts is probably not your strong suit, but prove us wrong. We will read it if it's worth reading, or if it's a super chat. Marco.
Yeah, the main issue that seemed to be mentioned to justify the riots, which cannot be justified by any reason at all, it's just pure violence, is immigration. But of course, immigration is just the umbrella term which the media tend to use in order to flatten down the issues which are actually plaguing our society. By identifying immigration as an issue, we are ignoring the fact that there are thousands of people escaping France and coming to Britain in order to milk our welfare state. That there are part of these people are from countries which hate civilization in the West, but nevertheless are allowed to come in. And then hides the fact that protests like the pro-Hamas one we've seen, and there was one even yesterday in Parliament Square or Saturday, are still carrying on. They're still chanting from the river to the sea, but they're not police them with the same strength and force and determination as these police, this far-right protests and riots are dealt with. We're talking about the Prime Minister was on his knees during the BLM riots. We're talking a Prime Minister that told us last week that the prisons are full, but we have got room for these anti-immigration people. And it's the same Prime Minister who despite having seen a big discontent, even among his former voters, about immigration, about the fact that we got boats coming from France into Britain with people from the Middle East or God knows what, because they destroyed their own document in order to exploit the asylum system. Is now went and announced an amnesty for the refugees. So effectively, people are telling him we're not happy with the stuff, and what he's doing doubles down against them, which is exactly what's happened in France after the Le Pen's party looked like it would have got majority in parliament, and they got together with the far left, the very people who disrupted the Olympics, in order to stop the right. And that's exactly what the EU did after they effectively been trounced by the far right and right center parties during the European election. They reformed the same old government, just they used what they call a cordon sanitaire, which is literally means keeping the infection away from the far right, and they got together with Greens and all sorts of stuff in order to effectively shut down the protests from the people who are telling the politicians we've got enough of this immigration from people who hate us, who hate our way of life, who hate our civilization, and this is being ignored. So this is a big problem, because you cannot shut down the concern coming from the people and just call them far right and threaten them to send them to jail, because we've seen what kind of problem we have from rioters from other communities, and they've been dealt in a different way. So we need to have a conversation as a country, as a probably the whole West. We need to talk about immigration, realize that actually immigration as such is a good thing. The problem is the kind of benefit system that we allow to lavish on anyone who demands it. And the issues, as you, Razi, mentioned earlier on, that if you commit a crime, if you behave like a thug, you go to jail. I don't care what you look like. I don't care what your reason is. You break the law, you go to jail. But this doesn't seem to happen. And that's what is going to exacerbate the problem in the future. And again, Starmer's solution is, oh, let's punish the people who cause trouble if they're not from a certain section of the community, and at the same time, let's stop the social media people, because companies, because they make lots of money. That's the excuse. They make lots of money, so they shouldn't be allowed to help this kind of behavior. It's a page coming from Stalin, really.
Richard, I just want to quickly say I want to encourage the people in our audience, and I'll say more about this when it's my turn. But you know, some people in our audience were upset about the title. Were upset about the fact that we're criticizing Tommy Robinson. People who, you know, like our content because it's pro-Israel. I want to encourage you to read the live chat. If you're not watching live, we'll make sure it's available for you. I guess some Tommy Robinson supporters or some of the rioters who have access to a device with YouTube installed found us, and there's a bunch of people calling me the N-word. Well done to them for figuring out that if you reverse the letters, then you get past the YouTube algorithm. That is probably the greatest achievement of their mind in their lifetime. But just generally look at look at the chat, look at some of the new people we have today, and I think this should tell you why, even if some of these people might say they support Israel against Hamas, they are not your friends, they are not your allies. You don't want them as allies. And yeah, I'll say more later, but Richard.
Yeah, I mean, there are so many threads to the overall picture, the story of what we're covering here, that you've got, if you follow each one, you know, you're letting go of the others for a moment, but you've got to remind yourself that they all exist and it's all integrated together, whether it's the issues that are running and have been running for many years, whether it's the riots themselves, whether it's focusing on particular individuals, either as bogeymen or as people thinking they're sort of heavy supporters or fans of those individuals, and again, missing the wider picture or whatever. I do want to just add to my own comment from earlier when I was talking about the lack of information when a terrorist or murder occurs on the streets of Britain, and just add to the fact that that is a wider problem than the UK, and that occurs to every incident, whether it's, you know, kids being stabbed in a park in southern France, or incidents in Austria or Scandinavia or Brussels. That tendency is widespread, and of course this misinformation is very quick to fill any vacuum that exists, whether it's online or whether it's on TV. And often the news, when you read it, when you read a mainstream website or see a mainstream news channel, there are so many gaps and holes in a story that it's not even sometimes easy to work out the nature of that story, let alone interpret the implications of it. And when we're looking at the coverage of these riots across the country over the weekend, again, it's very difficult to match the different things that are going on, because you've got lots of bits of footage. You have to be able to verify that they do occur from this weekend, that they're not other incidents that have been brought in as evidence of other things going on. I mean, some of the stuff that we do know happened includes things like a shoe shop in Hull being burnt out, or in Sunderland, a police station being burnt out. There was a library as well in Liverpool, a community centre and library that again was burnt out. Obviously, when we're talking about the Hare Hill, we're talking about a bus being burnt out and a police car burnt out and turned over. So there's all that to cover. And then you look at what Keir Starmer says when he comes out in front of the Union Jacks and starts to make his speeches after a Cobra meeting of you know, police officers, etc. You've got him saying the usual politician phrases like "let me be very clear," which is always followed by something exceptionally vague, which in this case involves mentioning online incitement and online behavior and associating that with the riots, but not defining what you mean and what it means to be coming after people like that. There's the notion of Islamophobia and the very flabby, vague term that is when that's referenced as a cause that people are either supporting or fighting against. And of course, he's very selectively focusing on the far right violence of the last few days, and making sure he mentions far right at every opportunity, which is relevant to these few days, but of course cuts leads off from 2 weeks ago from the rest of it, and tries to pretend that that didn't happen. And of course, there's so much more going on than just that. So I think, well, let me leave it there for now.
Yeah, and we've seen white supremacists attack. I don't even know if they're Muslims, but whoever seems kind of brownish. And we've seen Muslims attack white people. And unfortunately, we don't hear that from Keir Starmer. And it's interesting. And again, I go back, although I'm not reading all the chat because there's a lot of it, but it's interesting to see how similar these people are to the Muslims they supposedly oppose. These are really two sides of the same coin. They're virtually indistinguishable culturally. They would, I said as a joke in our production meeting that if we can ship both of those sides to Rwanda, ideally on the same boat, then maybe that's a solution. I am joking. I would rather see them in prison. And by the way, yeah, I've also seen those numbers that show that prisons are nearly full. That's a problem, both in terms of that we don't have prisons, and we have enough crime to justify more people in prison even before the riots. So that's a concern of its own that hopefully this government will solve, although I really doubt it. A few things I want to. Oh yeah, so one thing I saw when the details of this teenager, who he actually is, came out, and he was, he's British. He was born in Cardiff, and I saw somebody mention that on Twitter, and then I look at the replies, and people say, well, being born in Britain doesn't make you British. This guy literally, first of all, it does legally. You're born in this country, you get a passport, and yeah, if you lived here for your whole life, yeah, you are certainly more British than wherever your parents happen to come from, and suggesting that is not the case is racist. That is what racism is. It means nothing about you that is that is relevant to your life is actually who you are. Who you are is your genetic makeup and essentially your skin color. Yeah, there's more to be said. Maybe I will address one last time this question about that I keep seeing in the chat, although I did answer it clearly. The new people in the chat aren't listening to what we're saying. The question of why the title calls this the Tommy Robinson riots, despite the fact that he has said that he's calling for calm. And he's calling for it to be nonviolent. He knows that that this is what is happening. He keeps promoting them wherever they're happening. He blames everybody except the actual rioters for the riots, and he has spent a career promoting this kind of stuff. So yes, Tommy Robinson is responsible to a great extent, not to the extent that I think Keir Starmer wants to hold him responsible, which is legally the fact that he's tweeting about it means he needs to go to jail. That is terrifying. But he needs to be held responsible for the person that he has chosen to be. Again, this is somebody who isn't even using his real name, even though his real name is known. He's using the name of a football hooligan. Like this guy, loves violence. He promotes it. You keep seeing him fighting Muslims on the streets. This is how he thinks he's fighting for what he thinks Western civilization is. He doesn't understand what Western civilization is. He's not a good person, and it doesn't matter if he expresses support for Israel. You really should not think of him as somebody who is on the good side of the war for Western civilization and against the threats to it from whether it's the left, Islamists, or anywhere else. He is another threat to it, as are his followers who are rioting. Matthew.
Well, just picking up on what Mark and Richard were saying a bit earlier, I'm just thinking, you were saying, guys, that there needs to be and I agree, there needs to be more of a sort of debate in the country about immigration policy. I'm just trying to think of any leading politician who's actually made a genuinely pro-immigration case, like emphasising the benefits of immigration, and I actually can't. I'm struggling to actually think of anyone, certainly in contemporary times. I mean, Labour are sort of not as anti-immigration as the Conservatives or Reform, but they don't come across to me as particularly being pro-immigration either. And I think we do need to have more of a debate, and the public need to hear the argument that people coming here to make their own lives better, provided that they sort of embrace certain basic sort of Western or British values, actually are people who benefit the country. And for the most part, it has to be said, until recent years, the vast majority of immigrants have been, well assimilated, have been law-abiding individuals. It seems it's something, as far as I can see, it's a minority who are not integrating and who are causing problems.
Marco.
Yeah, and that is part of the problem, isn't it? Because you squashed every single problem by using the term immigration. Immigration is not really the issue. The issues, again, are all the public order issues that we are not tackling because of political agendas, because of CRT and woke, the way that the institution look at these things. They see skin colors, they see different cultures, they don't see a criminal and an innocent victim. They twist the analysis and the solution of it. And by doing that, they just rile the other group, the group that they are seeing this kind of inequality, injustice happen. Of course they get angry. But what do you do? Instead of dealing with it, you just call them far right. You just effectively use the smear technique in order to shut them up and paint them all with the same color. And of course, these groups, yes, they are using the same both left and right, both the patriots and the Muslims are using the same technique. You can only distinguish them because one group shouts aloud, but the other one is wrapped up in the Union Jack. But ultimately, what you're doing, you're using violence in order to force your view. And frankly, if you really cared about the country, if you really care about the way of life, the way of life you're trying to get back, you will start talking about individual freedom. You will start talking about getting rid of the welfare state, which deprives people not only of the self-esteem of making a life for themselves, but also creates this kind of inequality where somebody gets a council house, somebody else doesn't. And that in itself, given the resources are reduced, are finite by the amount of stuff that the state steals from the people who make money, the people who go to work every day and get taxed in order to pay for this freebies, you cannot go down the route. But what do? Instead of arguing for, let's go back to a state where everybody's treated the same, they're arguing about our group should stand up to their group, and they have this undefined sense of something's going wrong. They don't identify, they don't spell it out, and they create this kind of atmosphere where I'm for British values, whatever they are, without specifying them, and therefore I am against the group. I mean, it's idiotic to assume that somebody, just because he's a Muslim, is a bad person. it's ridiculous to think that somebody, because he is a white Brit, is a good person. Just look at those monkeys attacking those shops. I mean, these are like baboons attacking a field of melons, isn't it? And they certainly look British. They don't look Muslim at all to me. But it's the behavior, it's what you believe in and how you react. You cannot just wrap yourself in a flag and say, I represent the old values of the Britain who create individual rights, parliamentary democracy, and all this kind of stuff. You can't just talk your way through it. It's your action that determines what you are. And ultimately, you cannot complain about the other side if you are behaving the same way that you're trying to fight.
I think people's tendency to define themselves by what they're against is part of the issue here. I mean, one of the things I think about here in London is the fact that we have people from all over the world who you meet in London. There's some of the best minds and ability and talent from all over the world, and that's the best thing about London. One of the worst things about London is you have some of the worst minds from all over the world and some of the worst behaviours from all over the world, and certain people who would like to model London, the London they've moved to, on the most backward parts of the world that they've come from. And both are relevant and both are valid. I think in terms of arguments, anyway. If I'm making myself clear there, I think when it comes to Keir Starmer, what Keir Starmer has said about having suddenly a standing army, suddenly he's got this reserve of police officers when he's been, a mere month ago telling us that we haven't got enough police officers, which we know because crimes of the shoplifting variety on the same kind of shops as we've just seen attacked through the glass, where people swipe them off the counter, don't get punished as they should, and therefore low-level crime, so-called low-level crime, shoplifting, etc., has become, de facto legalized in the way it has in many parts of the world due to that attitude, this idea that there's a two-tier policing, I think, is extremely relevant. I mean, the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, said that policing should be without fear or favour. Now, that is the phrase that has always been associated with policing since forever. It's a sort of set phrase the police use about, basically, you're all equal before the law. And a lot of this is about justice. Justice is the heart of what's motivating all sorts of people, but they're not necessarily analysing that justice in the right way. But of course, many of the people will point to the fact that keeping your own children safe from, when they go to dance classes, for example, or of course, if they happen to be in town and a whole load of rioters come in from somewhere, you want to keep your family safe, obviously. I think we saw Mark Rowley, the Met Police Commissioner today, the head of the Met Police in London. He was asked a question as he left the Cobra meeting today, and he pushed away the microphone as he walks past of the person asking about two-tier policing. An unnecessary push because he easily walked past it. Now that gives a bad emotive message to how you're reacting. And I think it's necessary for everybody to be extremely clear, both in their language and exactly what they're saying, to make sure that they're not, the picture they're laying out is clear, and of course the same words that they're using now can be used later on when there's a different kind of riot by a different community group, and the same words will be applicable, because it should be the principles of justice that apply across the board. And a lot of what Keir Starmer has said in the past 48 hours or so will probably come back to haunt him, because if there is down the line, not necessarily immediately or in future years or whatever, rioting from Muslim groups, for example, or any other particular community group, such as we saw rioting on the streets of London only a few weeks ago relating to the Bangladesh issue, where it was arguments over which side to support in the Bangladeshi government were transposed to Bangladeshi communities living within London, some for the government, some against the Bangladeshi government, who were choosing to throw chairs at each other and attack each other. Now, when it comes to that kind of rioting and disorder, will the Prime Minister be taking the same kind of lines, that their name should come out swiftly, that they should go straight to court, that it should be made public, they should be given strong sentences? Because it is definitely that across the board justice, where without fear or favour is not just a phrase, but an implemented principle of justice that is the only way that you're going to bring unity to a country and have people have confidence in both the police, the politicians, and the society that you live in.
Yeah, you mentioned, the same words being said by the authorities about these riots can and should be said about other riots. We also have been seeing regular pro-Hamas protests in London, and we saw how if a Jewish person happens to walk by there, they're in trouble, and the police will side with the rioters, with the people who threaten him in police presence. That is a problem. That is, of course, not a justification for these rioters. They should be treated with a heavy hand. I see all these scenes of cops being attacked, and I think what needs to happen for the police to be armed in this country. This is, I know it's a very British thing that British people are okay with, but for anybody who comes from a different country, for better or worse, for me, I come from a different country, and I want to see, laws enforced, at least the good ones, and they're easier to enforce when the cops have a gun. For people who come to this country to make it worse, they see the fact that cops are unarmed, that cops aren't really much of a threat to the white supremacist rioters. They also, they know cops aren't, they would never do this in America. These guys, most likely, most of them. Alex says in the chat, excuse me, but rape gangs, FGM, forced marriages, honor killings are solely or near solely related to certain immigrant groups. Yes, that is true. But all of these are crimes. So, and should be crimes, and should be crimes that are punishable and much more severely than they currently are. So, that is an issue of government policy and of police doing their job. And if any of that happens, they should be punished severely instead of the police holding off and not wanting to seem racist. But look, if this is not the problem that the white supremacists have, and even if they claim that it is, that's like somebody criticizing grooming gangs because they're Sunni grooming gangs and they're not grooming the Shiite way or stuff like that. These are people who want to make this country worse, and they are doing it. They are practicing what they preach by their violence. Alex, thank you for the super chat as well. He says Manchester police were armed, but their attackers were released without charge, I believe. That is atrocious. That's terrible. I mean, we saw what happened there, and of course, this is what you have a police for. And it's terrifying to see that politicians immediately on a video that was clearly not showing you everything decided to comment, and this cop, instead of getting a medal, got I don't know, fired or just suspended or left temporarily or whatever it is. But again, that is the kind of cop you want to see there, the kind of cop who, if he gets attacked, does what needs to be done. So yeah.
Should we just be clear what incident we're talking about there, in case it's fudged together with the rest? We're talking about, why were those police armed? We're talking about inside an airport, which is obviously a high, security area. So that's why the police are armed for a start. There obviously are, police who are armed who turn up to super violent incidences, as necessary, but that hasn't been seen on the streets largely. The particular incident in Manchester, a video was released of a policeman kicking a guy on the ground within the airport without the preceding context of what had happened just prior to that. And when that context did come out a few days later, it showed the guy on the ground having attacked a bunch of policemen within the airport, including breaking, I think, a female officer's nose in the course of that. And although the police officer, it brings him to the ground and arguably lets emotion get the better of him or whatever. There was a context to it which involved a considerable amount of violence from the perpetrator, and the aim of misleading the public by making it look like police brutality, willful police brutality without any purpose was clearly bogus right from the start.
Yeah,
So sorry,
Sure.
Rosa, can I just add on that? As far as I understand it, the officer who delivered the kick after the suspect was on the ground has been suspended, and there's basically he's being investigated because basically I think the upshot is, why did he need to put the further kick in once the guy was already sort of tasered and incapacitated? Clearly that will be properly investigated, and the officer will have the opportunity to explain himself.
Yeah, but that alone is terrible, especially after you see the full video. You want police, this sends a message. It's not just about this one police officer. It sends a message to other police officers. Be careful if you actually do what needs to be done to protect yourself. Look, anybody who resists arrest, we talked about this during the campus intifada. You don't resist arrest even if you're innocent. Your innocence will be proven, and at worst, you have like a few bad hours and a story to tell your grandchildren. You don't resist arrest. If you resist arrest, you probably know that you're in the wrong in some way, and these people very much were in the wrong, and yeah, it's the officer acted absolutely the right way, and it's a shame, and I would like to see more of that when dealing with these white supremacists. Now, the people in the chat who are saying, "Why am I calling white people white supremacists?" No, I'm calling white supremacists white supremacists. The people who in these riots, attack anybody who looks brownish, the people with swastika tattoos. That's who I'm calling white supremacists. So yeah, don't make it easy for yourself. If you want to challenge what I say, challenge what I actually say and not what you choose to hear. A few months ago, when there was a by-election in whatever shithole George Galloway was elected in for a couple of weeks, we talked about how Nick Griffin, the founder of the BNP, or just a longtime leader of the BNP, endorsed him. And Nick Griffin, by the way, people might not remember, also endorsed Corbyn when Corbyn was the leader of Labour and ran for prime minister. And some people found this surprising. We did not at all find this surprising. We found it a good topic to bring up as an episode here. But it's not at all surprising, because if you listen to what these people want, they want a type of socialism or centrally planned country. They want a country where again, Tommy Robinson might very well be the exception on this issue, but they generally tend to not like the Jews, which Nick Griffin and George Galloway share. And yeah, this is a part of what really terrifies me. We see different types of riots that or riots for supposedly different causes, that politicians pick and choose which one they want to excuse and which one they want to condemn. But we see that there is no essential, fundamental difference, and we don't see a voice for reason and for freedom, for capitalism, for a limited state that's limited but does what it needs to do, including get these people off our streets. Matthew.
Well, the point you were making about the police officer, first of all, there is such a thing as excessive force. I appreciate we're probably not going to agree on this one. All I'll say is let it be investigated. The officer will have his opportunity to explain himself, and we'll see where it goes. The rest of what you've just said, I wholeheartedly 100% endorse.
All right, let me just quickly address this comment. Razi, what about Muslims attacking British people every day? You're going to bring that topic up? Are you fucking kidding me? First of all, are you listening to what I'm saying on this episode? And other than that, you clearly haven't been watching this channel. Subscribe, watch some of our old stuff about anything. Randomly scroll without looking, click something, watch it, come back tomorrow or next week or whenever you feel like it, and let's talk about that some more. Marco.
Yeah,
This is why I don't bother with the YouTube comments.
Oh, this is I'm gonna send you this this whole thread.
Yeah, I'm not reading it all because I never do, but this sounds like different level, frankly, from what you're saying.
Well, this is nowhere near the worst one we got today. So it is the one that brought out the F word, but it's been building up. Marco.
Yeah, I mean, you said it there. Our governments are failing in the basic task, which is to protect the individual, to protect their citizens. And they don't do this by identifying different groups and treating them differently. The way a government should work is by identifying what is a threat for somebody's freedom and dealing and removing it. Similarly, if you govern a state like following the Marxist principle of the equity, i.e., the equality of outcome, you're going to end up favoring a group against the other, and that's exactly what British and Western government have been doing for the last 20 years. They identify a group and they say, oh, this group is more vulnerable for whatever reason, so we must give them a leg up. And by doing that, you just squash down another group. So if you do something good, you are penalized for being better better than somebody who's not as good. But somebody who's not as good is pushed up because we must all be at the same level. And this is what the main problem is. It's not by pushing a group against the other you're going to reach anywhere. It's by recognizing that if somebody breaks the law, if somebody uses violence, if somebody destroys somebody or kills somebody, that is the issue. That person needs to be dealt with. It doesn't matter if he's a Muslim, a white guy, a Japanese guy, or a black guy. It doesn't matter. Violence is violence. A crime is a crime. A crime has to be dealt with, whichever era comes. But here the push is we need more government, we need more institution, and Keir Starmer is now setting up this phantomatic army of policemen. You don't need more powers, you don't need more legislation. Just apply the legislation which is there and stop being so aware of color or whatever gender and ethnic issues that are presenting. Just treat a crime for what it is.
And one of the problems here is, of course, the language. And we see the language all the time. If everyone's a Nazi, then who you disagree with, then you can't identify a real Nazi. If everyone's far right, we're often called far right on this channel for different episodes for the kind of views which we express. But
we're called left, yes.
We're called far left as well, which is, of course, just the label of labeling someone you disagree with a nasty label. But obviously, we're none of us are shoving wheelie bins that are on flames into ranks of police officers or ever would. So that distinction needs to be made clear. I think a lot of what's coming up ahead is what counts, though. It's the things that we would all argue for, all four of us here. It's justice, freedom of speech, which means no blasphemy laws. It doesn't mean suddenly, or if you've got a blasphemy law for Islam, you must have one for Christianity. No, you don't need one at all. You need freedom of speech and no extra laws. You don't need a specific law for a specific rioting with a specific ideology behind it. You just need the existing law for clamping down on rioting. So this selective focus is part of the problem here. So yeah, justice, freedom of speech, equal application of the law, no use of this to gain additional authoritarian powers. You noticed already how some of the previous authoritarian powers, such as enforcing mask use everywhere, has come back to bite people, with people having to the police having to issue section, I think they're called 60 AA orders, if I remember rightly, removing face coverings, which are designed to disguise or conceal the appearance, so that rioters can use it to conceal their identity whilst they're smashing things up. All of some of the legacy of previous stupid government policies have come back to bite, and that's on a small scale. And some of the future ones could be even worse when it comes to the ability to express clear and honest views. And of course, finally, I'll just get it in quickly, the truthful reporting of what is happening, not the seeing things through a narrative, picking a particular agenda and deciding what you're going to show and evade even before you've begun to recognize what's really going on at a given scene when you're reporting it.
Yeah. Yeah, Marco, if they're short on funds for the police, they can hashtag defund the NHS. Let's get that trending instead of the stuff that's trending now. WUB, I did wash that lettuce before I ate it, and no, people can't catch it live unless they sign up to one of our more expensive membership levels. That's the kind of stuff I only do behind a paywall. Anybody watching can become a member. I'm sure many of our new viewers are eager to help support us, so you can do so at the link in the live chat and in the description, or you can become a YouTube member. I would love to keep arguing with the many angry people in the chat who, I'm used to being called like dirty Jew and stuff like that. Now I'm being called the N-word. That's innovative. But whatever, unfortunately, Daniel and I have a meeting about bringing back the cutting edge. So we cannot continue this episode for too long, but we can continue it for long enough to thank Kathleen for the super chat. Kathleen says, "Thank you for your excellent work in these turbulent, worrying times. You will not run out of topics to discuss." Thank you, and unfortunately, I expect that is correct. So yeah, we will be back here again tomorrow with the Daily Objective and the reality show. Like, share, subscribe, argue with the Tommy Robinson fans in the chat because that brings in viewers, that helps with the algorithm, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Bye.